Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, I'm actually really excited about this. I was going through my beer cellar and I discovered that I had one final bottle of the versions of these Wolf's Ridge Brewing Imperial Stouts with the Wolf nomenclature. So this specific one is called Wolf Canis Mexicanus. It clocks in at 10.8% ABV. This one is kind of a Mexican style stout and kind of on the heels of a beer. Gosh, it might have been the last review or the one before where we did this kind of mole flavored stout. We were talking about a lot of these kind of big imperial stouts out there with these similar additives. This is one. It's just another one in a long list. This one has cinnamon, vanilla, coffee, cacao, and chilies. Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company is, of course, based in Columbus, Ohio. So starting with the label art, this one has, yet again, kind of a wolf after a butterfly. It was a similar thing, but this one, instead of kind of having a white hue, has kind of a red-orange hue. So not too much else to talk about there. Really exciting. I loved all of these I've tried so far, so I guess I did have 4, maybe even 5 of these different versions of this beer. This one sounds awesome. Let's get it poured right in the old stout glass. All right. Very dark, reasonably thick, doing a good job forming a head here. We'll see how long this one sticks around. The others, for the most part, did a pretty solid job. So we'll see how well this one holds up. As expected, it is pitch black, just like the other beers in this kind of series we've tried. Same thing in terms of the effervescence. I can see very tiny, small, champagne-like bubbles coming off the sides of the glass. And indeed, it did form quite a nice, thick, creamy head. So we're going to get right up over this for a good sniff and see exactly what jumps out on the nose. You can definitely smell the coffee coming out of this. Even can really pick up the chilies. I'm not sure exactly what chili they used, but you can smell that there's a chili in there and it's got this residual heat. The cacao comes out okay. The vanilla gets a little muddled. Yeah, the coffee is quite prevalent, as is that roasty malt bill. So it smells rather like I would expect a beer of this style with these additives to smell. I've had enough beers with similar added ingredients to them to kind of come to expect that. But it's what does it taste like. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in and just see what this one's all about. Take one. Oh, yeah. Another big beer. Okay, so this one, the body feels a nice, robust, medium heavy. The mouthfeel is pretty resistant. It's not quite as thick as some of the others that I had. And indeed, as I was pouring it, I didn't think it looked visually quite as thick, but it's still got a nice bit of resistance. The body feels exactly right. It's big, it's robust, nice, medium, heavy. The mouthfeel maybe not quite as resistant as expected, but it's not off the mark by much. And in terms of agitation on the palate, this one does get pretty creamy when you move it around. So the flavor profile on this. This is reasonably similar to many beers like this that I've had. One thing I could say about this one is that it does have a much more pronounced kick of heat from the added chilies. I don't know what specific chili they use, but it definitely has a good bit of heat without adding any kind of chili flavor to it. Chilies in beer, if you get too much of the actual fruit itself, it can put these kind of funky flavors into the beer. That's not here. This is just here for heat. The coffee really also jumps out at you as well. It's a nice, deep, rich roast. This to me doesn't taste like a French Italian, but it's a nice, good, deep roast, and it feels like they used plenty of beans in there. The malt bill, very roasty. It's got a lot of earthy back to it. It's got some nice elements of char, and it really is doing a great job binding with the coffee that they added in this. So really, so far, no real surprises. I didn't get a ton of cinnamon or vanilla coming through on that first sip, but the coffee and the cacao and the chilies are really quite present and prevalent, and they're very easy to pick right out. So I'm going to jump back in for a second sip. Yeah, head settled away. It's still got a little bit of a pad on top, but it is what it is. So I'm going to jump back in for a second sip. We're going to let everything re-intensify. We're gonna pick apart what else I can pick out, see if I can hone in a little more clearly on the cinnamon, vanilla, see if they pop a little more, and then we're gonna talk about this finish. But this is just another one of these kind of similarly themed Imperial Stouts that is just fantastic. It's great. I'm loving the brewers using these ingredient combinations. It just works in a big Imperial Stout. So take two. The chili, you get a slight chili flavor up front. That backs down pretty quickly, and as it's backing down, it's when the cinnamon first pops, and then you start to get that chili heat, and then the coffee and the roasty malt bill underneath really start to intensify. And it opens up into this really rich roast. Just tons of levels of roast coming distinctly from both the malt bill and the coffee. It gets in these elements of char and this really big earthiness to it. There's actually a decent kick of bitters coming off of this. And to me, it tastes like it's coming purely from the malt bill. The vanilla, to me, seems to be coming on the back end after the first initial bursts of intensity. They kind of settle down and it plateaus out a little bit around the 10-second mark. That's when the vanilla really starts to come into play. So it's a lot more pronounced on second sip. Everything re-intensified, recoated the palate. The thing I could tell you on second sip, I thought initially that the mouthfeel not super viscous. It actually felt more resistant. So I don't know if the beer was just settling, but nonetheless, so far, this is just another really good example of what makes this combination of flavors work so well in this beer style. This one is done extremely well. I'm a big fan of the volume of heat coming off of this, the intensity of the roast from the malt bill, how it binds with that coffee, and the other additives all having their own voice. It's extremely well balanced. In terms of the finish on this is not quite as long as, say, something that would be barrel-aged, and really where you're kind of left on the end of it. There's a little bit of lingering coffee and earthiness from the malt bill, but noticeably still a good bit of residual heat. So this is one of the more spicy ones. You know, it's maybe not something for everybody if you don't have a high tolerance for spicy things, but if you do, this is really a treat because it's noticeably more spicy than the average ones of these that have the chilies in them. But this is just another fantastic rendition of these Wolf Direwolf beers, Imperial Stouts I've had from Wolf's Ridge. I absolutely love this. They've all been a treat, and I am going to really enjoy my time sipping on this one slowly. When we come back, we will get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now we're going to get this beer ranked. This was Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company's Wolf Canis Mexicanus. Again, an Imperial Stout, clocking in at 10.8% ABV. This one was brewed with cinnamon, vanilla, coffee, cacao, and chilies. Wolf's Ridge Brewing is based in Columbus, Ohio. So this was the final version of all of these Wolf's, you know, kind of derivatives in the nomenclature that I tried from Wolf's Ridge, and I really was impressed with all of them. So we're going to go through and get this one kind of down the line. Starting with the aroma, just as with the first 3, 4, gosh, this might have been the 5th or the 6th even, I lost count. But the aroma was very pungent. They all had that kind of level of pungency to them. You could really smell the depth of the roast, and really all of the additive ingredients, by and large, really made their presence known. Some were a little more tricky, some didn't pop out of the aroma, but they were all well above average in terms of pungency, and they smelled fantastic. This was no exception. The aroma does get a 9 out of 10. For the taste, I absolutely loved it. I guess I had stuck this one in the back expecting to like this one the best. Surprisingly, there was another one that I had that I preferred, but this was just as great as all of the first. Really nice depth of roast. We're talking rich, deep, dark, earthy roast with a really nice sense of bitters, and this blend of ingredients, much like a lot of Imperial Stouts I've reviewed in the last few years, similar kind of tweaks, but it was that same vibe. And it's really the chilies that kind of seal the deal on these to bring out that extra level, that extra layer of just a new sensory experience, and it worked extremely well in this beer. Taste gets a 10 out of 10. For the body on this one was huge, just like the priors. Body gets a 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel on this one just did miss top tier status for me. It felt nice. There was a good bit of resistance, but it didn't quite match the weight of the body, and it was just a little bit less thick and viscous for what I expected based on the priors that I had, but it didn't miss it by much. The mouthfeel gets a 9 out of 10. For the finish on this one was definitely above average. Maybe not quite as long as I expected, but really the chilies in this one didn't have quite the same potency of heat that I've had in some others. And sure, there was that nice underlying earthy, roasty, bitter edge that kind of drove it forward to make it above average, but it just really stopped there. I definitely had some longer finishes on some others, certainly other stouts in the same ABV range. Finish gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one did okay. It was really just high end of average. It's luck of the draw when you're pouring at home. I'm sure off of a tap it would be absolutely fantastic. Poured at home, just high end of average. Head and retention gets a 6 out of 10. For the appearance on this beer, exactly as expected, absolutely pitch black, gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on really all of the beers that I had from Wolf's Ridge like this, really, really well done. All of the additives that they put into the beer really found their place, had their voice. Cinnamon, vanilla, coffee, cacao, and the chilies all worked together, and on the back of this wonderful, wonderful base malt bill. Balance gets a 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, subjectively, I loved it. I loved all of them. This was no exception. 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. So this is just a really well done, additive, high ABV Imperial Stout. All of them that I had in this kind of lineup, they were all fantastic. I think this also deserves credit for what it did. It lost a few points in a few categories, nothing that major. And, pouring at home is always a crapshoot. It comes out how it is, but this was a very well done Imperial Stout, especially with this kind of similar additive build that you find in a lot of others. This was another great one in that same type of vein for what they were trying to produce. And I do think it deserved its earned 10 out of 10. So we take all the scores together, and Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company, our Wolf Canis Mexicanus does get a 91 out of 100. Well above average, guys. Honestly, there wasn't a bad beer in the bunch. If you're a fan of big, big, big in-your-face Imperial Stouts, any of these fit the bill. Just whatever the additive ingredients, you think sounds the best to you, there's not a bad one in the bunch, and I would recommend this to any big stout fan. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit the bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.